So this new album that is coming out or due out on, I think, April 4th is what I've got, Higher Up in the Hills. It's y'all's first album, I think, in 4 years. The first two singles have been, have a pretty rockin' flair. Dogs and Horses, which we just heard. Nothing's Working, which we'll play in a little bit. Your last couple albums have been more rock sounding than some of your early work. Is that fair to say? And what's in store for us on the rest of this album?
I feel like they've all been different. I mean, it's a pretty obvious progression probably throughout the course of whatever it is, 7 or 8 albums at this point. But a lot of that I think comes from the live show, and we spend 90% of our business and our time is spent on stage, like gigging. That's really where we do our thing. So the live show definitely dictates what we end up working with in the studio. I think this record in particular is probably one of the more cut and dry. I feel like it was a kind of a simplified version. We're a 5-piece band these days. It's everything that's on the record is kind of what we've been playing on stage. A lot of the songs we've been playing for a few years already, or it was stuff that was like buried deep in the notebook. So there's a broad spectrum of songs that made it onto this record. So you're going to hear stuff from like 4 or 5 years ago that I think we did well to make it all cohesive, though. Part of that is because it's essentially the 5 of us doing what we do. We didn't get really fancy and overdub 1,000 things. And in the past, we've gotten a little more experimental with synth guitar and with some, really wild effects. And we didn't really go that route this time. This is just kind of like what we sound like if you're in a room with us.
Sweet.
Hopefully.
There's also, I think on this one, it's mostly pretty rocking, but there's a couple kind of acoustic-y tracks too. And there's a little bit of stuff with kind of a country flavor, and there's a little stuff with kind of a acoustic flavor. So it's still a good balance, but it's probably 80% rock record, I think.
That's a good balance, right? And then the next question we were going to ask was kind of about the evolution, your music evolution. And you kind of explained that, you've recorded the songs that are going to be on the new album. You've already been playing, they were written probably, a few years ago. So would you say that this record is kind of an example of the evolution of your music or your songwriting? Is there an evolution there as well?
It's a good mix too, because it's not, I think definitely there's going to be some stuff on there that we've been playing and that we were already really familiar with. And then there's a lot of stuff on there that we ended up with 14 tracks on this record. And I think that was more than anybody expected. The idea has always been to bring more to the table than we need and make sure that if there's some stuff that doesn't get wrapped up or doesn't feel right, we don't worry about it. But when we were done tracking, which we did over the course of a few months, we kind of did this one in 3-day stretches, 4-day stretches, whenever we could fit it in between gigs. When we were done, there was no fat on it. There was nothing that we weren't really feeling. So best of both worlds. There was some stuff we were coming up with and we were still working on parts right up until the last days. I think one of the last songs that's on the record literally got done the last day. We didn't even expect to do it. It was just like, we've got one more day. We finished all this stuff that we needed. What else are we going to try? And it was just something we'd never even worked on and never really done together. And we knocked it out in an afternoon. So it's really,
nice.
It's a great feeling when that stuff kind of comes together. It's also a great feeling when you already know what you're doing and what the vibe is and what you're feeling, and you can just go in and put that down too. I like both methods. But in general, as far as evolution goes, yeah, we're in a cool place. We've done a lot of records. We've been at this for 15 years. This was the easiest and most fun record to date. That it feels like we're doing something right.
For sure.
So, Will, out of curiosity, what's the writing process like? Is there a primary writer? Do the two of you get together and write and then take it to the band? Does the band bring stuff to you guys? How do you put together the songs that wind up on an album?
They're all a little bit different, I think, but typically Luke or I are writing solo and bringing a song in that's kind of pretty much written, and we have a pretty good idea of what we want it to sound like, or like it'll be kind of obvious, like this one's got a rock feel to it or whatever. Sometimes we go away from that, and Luke and I have co-written quite a bit of stuff, and that'll usually be like something where I've been working on something that I started solo, and I'm like, Luke, I'm a little stuck here. and he can get it across the finish line. Or Luke might be like, I'm working on this tune, don't quite have the perfect chord progression for it yet. And I'm like, what about we try this or something like that? So we do like Luke and I do a lot of collaboration after we have an idea that we're already bringing to the table. And then with the band, it's the same kind of thing. We let the arrangements kind of develop pretty organically. And we'll usually like jam on something in the rehearsal space quite a bit just to give it a little room to breathe and see where everybody starts to feel comfortable or excited about like a part or something. But so in terms of the bones of the song, we're usually bringing them in solo and then filling them out with the boys.